I'd like to call to order this June meeting of the RSU 25 School Board. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, this is a special time for us as we have a new board member, and I would ask that, Josh, would you please proceed with the swearing in of the new board member?
I can absolutely do that. So, Natalie has her oath.
Can do worse than mine.
We've learned.
I missed
we've
half the
given-
word.
given the
I
script.
had one, I still missed half the word,
I
sort of.
appreciate the script.
So you just hold up her hand, read out the script, and you can tell.
I, Natalie Aruda, do swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my abilities the duties incumbent on me as a Regional School Unit Board Director of Regional School Unit 25, according to the Constitution of Maine and laws of this state, so help me God.
Good
Just
job.
sign your copy.
Better than mine.
Thank you.
Welcome. And before we move on, I just wanted to publicly, and I know I put this in my report, so welcome Natalie on to the school board, but also thank Mr. Goff Kiernan for his service over the last 3 years to the RSU 25 board.
Great. And with that, I would ask Josh to please take the attendance and roll call.
Yes, Mr. Foster,
I am here.
Mr. Burgess,
Present.
Mrs. Foster,
Here.
Mr. Frazier,
Here.
Mr. Nealon,
Here.
Mr. Wentworth, here, Ms. Atherton Dow,
Here.
and Ms. Aruda.
This is a time for public participation. If you are here as a member in the audience and would like to come forward, you can join us before the crystal podium. If you are outside of our meeting, but would also like to publicly participate, you can through email for public comment at rsu25.org, or you can phone in for public comment at 307-8099. Do you have anyone for public comment? Not yet. Okay, great. Then we will go through adjustments to agenda, and there are many.
There are. So I won't go through reading all these, but before, I didn't catch this, and thank you to Mr. Ward and Mr. Magnus, but we always approve our fall coaches at the June meeting and as opposed to the July one so that they can do summer workouts. So we have basically added every BMS and VHS fall coach that we have for approval. Then the only other adjustment is I would like to move L6 to directly after committee reports.
Seeing no objection, let's do that. I would now ask for approval of the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of May 12th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have communications and correspondence.
So as you had in my report, obviously the big communication that we had was from Andy and Shelby Silvernail. At our dedication, we had a really nice ceremony for the family where we were able to dedicate the Science, Technology, and Engineering Center here, and as well as the weight room to the Clement family. Obviously, we have just seen a tremendous amount of financial support from the Silvernail family, so it was, obviously just, they were very touched and very honored by the dedication. But I also got a notification from Andy the day before that him and his family had been talking and, they were looking forward to coming here, they were looking forward to the ceremony, and that they would also be donating another $250,000 to the RSU. And then in typical fashion, it doesn't come with any strings they want to be part of the planning process in terms of how it is utilized, but really more just as a support and listening here as into saying it needs to go to X, Y, or Z. So we received that communication. We also have an agenda item because of the size of the donation. We have to accept it as a board. So you'll see that. And the last communication I have is, last Friday, I went down to the Department of Labor. We had our penalty discussion over the, remember when that they did the inspection back in January or February. We did incur just $3,000 of fines, which we were pretty happy about at the time, compared to what some of these visits, inspections come from the OSHA side of things. But we had the opportunity to correct, tell them what we did, and then they get a penalty discussion. So I went down and described what we had done, showed the evidence. Anthony and Steph did a lot of great work. And they are making the recommendation to the commissioner that they abate all of the fines, or at least reduce them. So I would expect us to see at least probably a 50% reduction or all the way down to nothing. So,
Well done.
and that's all I have.
Well, what was Jim's last one? Did you do better than Jim, or was he fine? Like,
It was
We're
years
just
ago.
checking with
It
your
was
first
years
year.
ago. It was right around 10,000. I don't know what it got abated to, but
oh,
the
that's
initial
no.
one.
So your initial was far less than Jim's. So you did an excellent
I'm
job.
gonna give Anthony the credit for this, because again, that.
Or Jim set him up well.
Yes,
I mean, you can look at it either way.
For the board chair report, just want to say that the year rounded out very nicely. We had a wonderful showing from the track team, and we had a lovely graduation. I wasn't able to attend, but I did watch it online. Look at that. It wasn't outside, even though it didn't rain, it was threatening. But also, got to attend the HCTC pinning ceremony for the nurses, which was quite nice. And we had a great showing for the vote for the budget, which passed with a really wide margin. So it was a great year overall, and that is the board chair report.
Now, I'll just add to that real quickly, Tom, that we have softball playoff game tomorrow, so Northern Maine championship game. So this will be their third year in a row for the Northern Maine championships, and hopefully we'll have another state championship appearance on top of that. They play Mamnocket tomorrow evening at the Brewer at 7 o'clock.
Now we've got committee reports. We've got curriculum committee.
Yep, we met on June 5th. We reviewed the minutes, they were acceptable. We did open it up for public comment, we had none. Then Christina reviewed the K-12 social studies curriculum draft that was that's gonna be brought here tonight, so I don't have to get too much into that. We had a BHS cell phone policy enforcement plan that was reviewed by Josh. This is basically because Maine legislation has now banned cell phones from public school classrooms, so our policy's already in compliance, but we have to actually enforce the policy. So this is, we're trying to institute that. And then lastly, Christina talked about the ESEA title grants, allocation and draft projects. She had preliminary Title I numbers, but she didn't have any of the other ones, and she has to write grants based on the previous year's data. And then Josh gave us some district updates. At that time, we were talking about graduation, summer school starting on July 8th, and the lower grades and high school will be starting a little bit earlier. And we will meet on September 4th is our next one? That's a shock to me. I thought we were gonna meet next month. Surprise, I didn't read that part. So we will be meeting in September. I guess we have summer off.
Any questions for curriculum? Finance committee met right before this meeting. I was partially in attendance for the last few seconds. Thank you to Aaron Ward for his quick thinking and calling me. But the summary that I received at the end was that the finances are in good shape, and we're trying to round out the year with the last few adjustments on picking up some payables that are hanging at the end of the year. The senior food, we're also going to tidy that up and wrap that up for the end of the year. There's a little remaining balance, but we're going to adjust that out. Any questions on finance? Policy Committee.
Policy committee, yeah, we sort of that. So the main topic of discussion in the last few months has been around our tobacco and alcohol use as it applies to extracurricular activities. Through a student request, so our current policy is 30 days for the first offense, 30 days for the second offense, 30 days for the third offense. Thought that was harsh on that first offense, so we've been looking at some policy updates for that, looking at other schools and what they do. Mr. Tripp had a conflict at the last meeting where he needed to be out of there early. We changed the time and not everybody got that memo, so didn't have a lot of attendance at that. So we decided to move that forward to the next meeting and continue that conversation and hope to bring something forward to the board, either to push forward or to stay where we're at. And so that can be put in the handbooks in time for fall sports to start up. This is a 2-month process, has to be first reading, second reading in order to be adopted. So that's where we're at right now as far as policy.
Any questions for policy? Okay. Facilities and grounds,
We did not meet.
HCTs.
And we did not meet.
Oh, excellent. That brings us to L6. All right.
So I'm gonna invite Mr. Mackes, and our soccer coaches, Coach Boynton, and Mr. Ward. We have a similar situation that we had 3 years ago in regards to our numbers in our soccer program, where we were with our football program about 3 years ago. And so Mr. Ward and Mr. Mackes are going to provide us some information and then basically just give us a discussion with maybe some possible action coming out of this. But I think after hearing where this discussion goes, it will kind of help us make some informed decisions that we may not have all the data to for a little bit of time.
So while Mr. Mackes is getting the presentation set up here, it is hard to believe we're looking at fall sports already, but the fall sports, summer programming and all that stuff gets underway, I think, tomorrow with basketball and all of that. So it's fast approaching, and we've kind of kept our pulse on the numbers of our boys soccer program. This is something that's been in my board report really probably most of the year. I've kind of touched upon it, looking at numbers, and Mr. Mackes has been working really closely with Mrs. McQuarrie, Mrs. Dickey, Mr. Boynton, and the coaches at the middle school to kind of look at where we stand in terms of a program with numbers, knowing that there is this option now of an 8-man program for soccer, which is relatively new in the last couple of years. And I don't want to steal too much of Mr. Mackes' thunder here, but that cutoff is around 17 athletes is what we're looking at for the decision to go 8-man or remain 11-man. So we are currently, as of this meeting, I believe it's 16, right? So that's kind of on the table. We have, and this is no fault to the success of the program. If you've been following, our boys soccer program has been incredibly successful. Mr. Boynton done a fantastic job. Mr. Donnell Jacob over there, the assistant coach as well, has done a great job and has been a part of the resurgence of the soccer program. So they've really done well. But what we're looking at is just we have injuries and things have just kind of come up that have led to a reduction in numbers. So really kind of looking at considering the idea of going 8-man possibly for next season. And certainly Mr. Mackes done a great job with this presentation here. We'll kind of shed some light on why we might look at that, what the numbers look like, the impacts, scheduling, safety, all of that. So I will hand things over to Mr. Mackes.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Like you said, it's crazy to think that fall sports are something we're talking about now. For me and Mr. Boynton, we've been having this conversation since about October. We knew that numbers were looking lower next year, and we finished last season with numbers lower, just due to a few circumstances that Coach Boynton can kind of shed some light on to. And we knew that with the number of athletes we were graduating last year, this was going to be something that we might have to discuss. So we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. Again, you've been a part of this a few years ago with football. There's some similarities in the soccer side of things, in that this was created by the MPA for the same reasons, to keep programs that are having lower numbers still able to have teams. There's also some things that are different about it from football, like the fact that you don't have to alter your field size. You can play on a smaller field, but most schools do not, simply because usually one gender is still playing 11 person and the other gender is playing 8. So most schools still play on a normal sized field, so there's not as many of the logistical challenges that there may have been with football. So there's some similarities and differences there, but we'll get into it. So like Mr. Ward alluded to, the NPA soccer guidelines, it's another difference with football. Football had recommendations based on the number of students you had, but not a hard cutoff for 8 versus 11. Soccer does have a hard cutoff. Obviously, the hard part of that hard cutoff is a little open for interpretation because no one exactly knows how many students you're going to have in August when you're looking at things in April, May, and June, which we've been doing for a few months now. But the guidelines say to get an estimate of how many students you will have in the fall, and if that estimate is less than or equal to 17 athletes, you can apply down to the 8-person division for classification for that season. If you have 18 or more athletes, you have to play in the 11-person division, which is something we've been keeping track of over the past few months. Like Mr. Ward alluded to, we've been talking with the students who played last year for us that are not graduated seniors, and making a lot of calls to 8th grade parents, asking them in April and May, hey, do you think your kid's gonna play soccer in the fall? So we've been putting in some work there, and this is where we're at now. We're one different than when Mr. Ward, when we last talked about Mr. Ward. We are now at 17 again. There was another 8th grader that changed from a maybe to a yes. So we are right on that 17. Right now we're looking at 7 incoming freshmen, 5 sophomores, 3 juniors, and 2 seniors. We graduated 8 seniors last year, which is a big part of this discussion. We had a really big senior class that had kind of been a part of the resurgence of this program. We graduated 8 of them, and we're looking at adding, I guess now it's up to 7 8th graders on the roster. Looking ahead a couple of years, as Mr. Boynton will get into, all of this is just projection right now based on who is playing at the middle school level. A lot of things change between middle school and high school. And even once you're in high school, but we are looking at numbers going back in the right direction. After this coming season, we're projected in 2 years to have 8 freshmen, 7 sophomores, 5 juniors, and 3 seniors for a total of 23. And then the year after that, 4 freshmen, 8 sophomores, 7 juniors, and 5 seniors to get up to 24. So that's just kind of an idea of what we could be looking at for next season and the 2 after that, based on what we finished with this year and who was playing for the middle school team this year, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
All right, so I will touch on kind of what I've seen, and Jake can speak to this because I'm always the eternal optimist. I'm pretty sure every year I've ever coached, I've said we're gonna have like 35 kids this year, because there's 12 kids that told me, I think I'm gonna play next year. And then when it comes time to actually condition and show up in the fall, I don't know, coach, maybe not, might just try cross country, we'll see. And then we get to October and they haven't played a sport again. So as much as I love to believe projections, I'm gonna try to not be the optimist this year, because last year, 2025, there were supposed to be 12 incoming 8th graders. They all played soccer, they all told me they were gonna play in the fall, and then 4 of them switched to football, 1 of them moved away, and then 2 of them decided they didn't want to play a sport in the fall, and I ended up with 5 kids. I honestly probably could have gone, not honestly, I definitely could have gone to 8-man last year, and the only reason I didn't was we got this big group coming in, we're gonna have to revitalize the program. I was coming up with all these things to kind of, all right, what are we gonna do to reset with all these freshmen? And then they just didn't show. And that's always happened. So when I looked 2 years ago, I was supposed to have 5 incoming, and that was a small group. I don't know if anybody here knows the current, now going to be juniors and seniors, it's like 80% girls. All right, so the reason you're seeing this 3 and 2, it's not because they just don't exist. There's 4 of them that play football, there's 3 of them that play soccer, there's 2 of them that run cross country, and there's 3 kids that play video games, and that's the end of the junior and senior class. All right, as much as, a big part of what I've had to do over the last 4, 5, 6 years is bring kids in that have never played soccer before as juniors and seniors and teach them how to play. And I talk to other coaches and I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not something we do. So it's really unusual, and that's how we've kind of kept numbers at the mid-20s, upper 20s over a while now, but I'm running out of kids to recruit. We brought in Jackson Saunders last year, who scored 2 goals and had never touched a soccer ball until his senior year in October. And he started a week after he joined the team and scored a goal 2 weeks after he joined the team. And that was just so I could have 11 kids to play. So as much as I would love to say definitely 17, definitely 24, definitely 23, historically speaking, it just doesn't happen.
Even if I am able to get them, they don't start in July or August like you want them to. They start in October after I've harassed them for like 6 weeks straight and like, hey, you should probably do something now. You played soccer in middle school. So hopefully it comes up, but we'll see. That's my answer. You wanna talk first and I'll talk second?
Yeah, so just some of the reasons we've started looking at 8-person on top of just the low numbers of what 8-person would allow the program and our coaches to do. A big part of it is managing attrition. Like Mr. Boynton alluded to, last year I think the roster started with 20 or 21 athletes, including Jackson Saunders, who was recruited in October. And by the end of the season, we had some games where he had 14 active players, including 6 freshmen. A combination of things, including, grade check, injuries, suspensions, illness, attrition happens, whether it's temporary attrition or kids completely leaving the program. I think another kid just quit the team for no reason. And that stuff happens. And so being kind of right on that cutoff, going to 8-person soccer just gives a little more wiggle room for that attrition. If you go 11-person when you have 16, 17 kids, if you lose 4 kids, you now have 1 sub. So it just gives a little bit more of that wiggle room for the inevitable attrition. And then from a player safety standpoint as well, we're looking at, like you saw in the projections, of the 17 kids projected this year, I think it was 14 of those, or maybe 13 of those, 12 of those were freshmen and sophomores. And if you've seen some of those students, they are relatively small compared to the athletes that some of these other schools are putting out there. And just looking at the students we have, with 12 of the 17 being freshmen and sophomore, you would have to start at least 3 or 4 of those students, and another 3 or 4 would be getting significant time in 11-player soccer. And we condition them over the summer, we do weightlifting, we do all those things, but if they just haven't developed to be physically ready for varsity soccer yet, there's nothing you can do about that, and it can put you in a position where to field a team of 11 players, you're putting players out there that maybe aren't ready to be out there.
Right, I mean, what he's talking about, he's being kind to some of them. Like, of the incoming freshmen and sophomores, I think 3 of them are over 5'2" and 100 pounds. Like, they're going to get ruined by a kid my size in a varsity soccer game. And I worry that the big thing in that attrition piece is, yes, 12 of these kids are freshmen and sophomores. They're gonna come out, they're gonna get hurt, they're gonna quit, and that 23 is gonna become 10. And I know, and I can speak for a lot of people who have told me this, they're terrified of us going out with this group of kids and going 0-14, getting mercied in every single game and having a bunch of them get hurt, because they lived through that. A lot of the people that have played in this program for that decade where we didn't win more than a handful of games, there's a reason we don't see them hanging around the soccer program still. It's because most of them didn't make it through 4 years. It was not a fun time. So I want to make sure that these kids have a fun experience. Many of them didn't win a game in middle school. That's why another big piece of this is hard to keep them in it, because they got the crap kicked out of them for 3 years in middle school, and now they're coming up to play the same kids. So my big thing personally is accountability. One of the biggest reasons I took over the program is I saw a group of kids that needed guidance and structure and a way to motivate them into playing winning soccer, because they had talent but they just didn't have that structure. I think I've done a pretty good job of that over the years, but if I'm being honest, last year was by far the hardest I've ever had, because I had 14 kids and 4 of them didn't come to practice yesterday, and 2 of them were sick, and 1 of them was on grade check, and I have no way of well, you're not starting, because someone has to start. And then at that point, what are my rules anymore? It just became very, very difficult to manage the team. My practice numbers were the worst they've ever been, and I'm worried that that's going to be a thing. I don't want that to be a thing, right? So that's why I really wanted to switch. There were several times I might have glanced over at Dan and Aaron and said, 8-man next year, when we were starting 13 kids and 2 of them were late to the game. And that's my big thing. I took over because I played in a system. I went to Belfast where soccer was the secondary sport, and I wanted to protect these kids and protect the program. And I want to be around for a very long time and continue that. We were lucky for a while there with some great numbers and some really talented kids. But back when Jake played, it was 15, 16 kids, and we had to work really, really hard to win 4 or 5 games. And that's what this group's gonna be, and I want to be as good as it can be, but I want to make sure that that program continues. Just some other logistical pieces about 8-person. This is a list of just in our conference, the teams that have 8-person boys teams this year. There may be more that change because the deadline to tell the MPA and the league that we're going 8-person is July 1st. So there may be other teams in the same position as us that are close and are thinking about it. These are the teams that have already declared 8-person. You'll see a lot of similar opponents from a lot of our other sports. Holton, Matanoka Academy in Lincoln, Dexter, Sumner, PCHS in Guilford.
And did some of them just drop down? Because I feel
Some
like
of
you
them are
played
new
them
this
last year.
Yes, some of these are new this year. Lee Academy, Shed, Searsport, and Bangor Christian. So they have all said that they will be. Yeah, so these will all be 8-person this year. Now, one thing about scheduling as well is the schedulers will sometimes schedule an 8-person team against an 11-person team, especially the smaller 11-person teams. And you would just play 8 on 8. Those teams, those 11-person teams that get scheduled there, they just agree to play 8 on 8. Unless both teams happen to have 16 kids there that they want to play 11 on 11, it's up to the teams on that day. But we wouldn't necessarily get all of these teams. We could still get a couple 11-person teams and just play them 8 on 8.
And I saw that you have 1 year if you go down to 8-person and you have 18, 19 kids. What happens if next year you do get a big, you get 6 more kids? Do you have to declare that early, or will they just let you go up when you actually have that?
Yep, so the nice thing about the soccer 8-person, it's a 1-year classification. So the classification cycle is 2 years, but you can declare up or down from 8 year by year. You could theoretically go up and down each year. Obviously, that's not ideal. But yes, it's year by year.
From a safety and playing standpoint for the kids, I mean, it makes sense because you might even be able to have a JV team, right?
Potentially, if we went 8, we may be able to pick up a couple games for some of those freshmen.
Maybe not, I don't know.
Probably not a full
I just think
schedule.
about like kids playing and.
Yeah.
But the other piece to your point is, if we play 11, we will not in any way, shape, or form have
No,
a
definitely wouldn't
JV
have a
game.
JV team.
Because last year I played JV games with like 18, 19 kids, and starters had to start the entire JV game, and that became an issue. And at the end of the year, when we had a couple of kids who were JV kids on grade check, I had to cancel the games, and that's not fun for anybody.
Yeah, is this the only class of 8-man?
Yes, there's north and south.
Just regional?
Yeah, so there's
So there's no
8-person north and
A,
8-person
and A.
south. There's no
Okay.
A, B, C, D. Yeah,
Makes sense.
Am I correct that it's a 14-game season?
it's 14 game season.
So there's 9 games there, so you might only play 7 different schools twice.
Right, or you might play 5 of them and pick up a couple 11s as well. Yeah.
Because the travel, a concern I had was, what is the travel, but when you showed that's relatively
Yeah.
close.
It's
Well,
actually
if you look at our-
closer than our 11-man schedule.
Yeah, if you look at the 11-person schedule,
Yeah.
we're scheduled, I mean,
We would be going to Fort Kent with the girls this year, so that doesn't cut that out, but
Well,
we're scheduled to
football's-
go to Washington Academy
And Callis.
to Callis for 11,
And I
so
know Shed
similar if
and
not
Holden
less
are
travel.
about the 2 furthest away, and they're really not that bad.
Right.
I think that is it. Yeah, so are there any other questions about the logistics or, so the big thing why Dr. Tripp alluded to, we don't have all the information yet, is summer soccer starts this Wednesday. So they practice Wednesday and Friday of this week. And that will really give us some insight of who shows up to that. We've made a lot of phone calls, we've got our projected roster, but we won't know much more until Wednesday. And then we'll know even more, obviously, August 18th. But we need to make a decision for the MPA and for our league scheduler by July 1st. That's the deadline that they give. So, whether that decision happens today or when we get more information from summer soccer this week is kind of what we wanted the board to discuss and see what other questions you had for us about the possible change or the reasons for it.
So this year's team, regardless of numbers, will be quite young, correct?
Very.
Okay, that may be a safety
Yeah, I can go back up to
reason
the-
And you
to
really,
drop
even
down
if
this
you got
year,
like
you know.
18 kids, for 1 year you can't be penalized, it says.
Right, yeah, you just have to go off of good faith of what you think.
Right, obviously you think you're not going
And
to.
it might be better for them in the long run to have a developmental year at at 8-man with younger kids, that you get, you know,
Right,
more of that exposure.
And to be sure, the 8-person teams aren't all young, it's not like a JV division. I watched those regional finals games last year. Those are still very physical teams with even more space to play with. It's still very good soccer. It's just you're not having to put as many kids out there, so you're not
Yeah,
needing to
more
go as
subs.
deep into your reserves, especially when your reserves are kids that might not be ready for varsity soccer yet. But it's still very physical, and very good soccer, fun soccer to watch for
Are
sure.
the kids wanting to go 8-man?
Yes.
Well, they-
Yeah, I don't really see any reason to
We
not.
we had a soccer team here for 36, this is gonna be its 36th year. And I was one of the kids back 37 years ago who brought soccer to Buxton. And I remember that first year in 1989, when about 13 of us went on to an 11-man team, because that's what we could scrape together.
Oh, boy.
Only one of us had ever played soccer. Many of us, including me, had never seen soccer. And we did not start in the summer. We started about a week before our first and it is very rough when you are the one of two people who generally sit on the bench and you are called out to have to play half a game. And you lose to Bangor 13-0, and the only play that you have is to hurl your 103-pound body at the largest person that you can, hoping that you get a penalty. So I don't want to put our kids into that type of predicament again, but I absolutely want us to have a successful soccer. So I would make a motion that for the upcoming season.
Before we do that, can I interject real quick on the motion?
Sure.
Piece to it. The nice thing is we actually don't have to have a board approved decision to move.
Well, then, scratch it.
So, and the only reason I bring that up is because, and I appreciate the sentiment. The reason I want to do this now in terms of discussion, we are gonna have the summer soccer program start. If for some reason we were to have 8 additional kids that we do not know about show up and Coach Boynton has 25 kids, to me, that would not meet the criteria of a good faith effort and saying we
That's
should be
right.
playing 8-person soccer. So I don't think it's wise for us to make a declaration that we are going to go 8-person here. I think we should wait as close as we can to that July 1st deadline to see if there's anybody that does come out. Sometimes you get transfers throughout the course. It's unlikely. I think Mr. Magus, Coach Boynton, Mr. Ward, they've knocked on all the doors, right? They've done their due diligence to make sure that this, I mean, to the point where they're just adding one person here, you know, at the last second. I think if there's consensus that
We trust
we
them.
get to July 2 weeks from now, and, you know, just before that July 1st deadline, and we're not seeing these numbers, that you're okay with Mr. Magus letting the conference know that we're gonna play 8-person.
When do you have to do the scheduling, or?
So the schedule is, we have an 11-person schedule built right now, but I've been in contact with the scheduler throughout the whole process, letting him know that this could be a thing. To be honest, the deadline is July 1st, but there have been teams in the past that have gotten special permission from MPA and have put it on the scheduler to remake a new schedule in August. We didn't want to be that person and that school, we wanted to know by the actual deadline.
We're gonna put 5 away games at Holton,
Yeah, but no, our scheduler is well aware that this was coming, and is aware that we could be going 8. I don't think he made a complete backup schedule, but I'm sure he's got some ideas in mind of what that could look like. And so as long as I let him know before that deadline and send a message to the MPA, they'll reclassify us to that 8-person, and he'll build a schedule for 8 and then.
Are there any other schools in this situation that are wishy-washy?
I don't know if there's any currently that are wishy-washy. Well, one last year, so Skink was 8 last year, right?
Yeah.
And they are currently classified to 11. So who knows if they show backup on this, maybe they think they have more kids and then kids won't show up. I'm sure this will not be the final list. It never is. Being a soccer scheduler right now is not an enviable job because you have to start from square one sometimes in July and August.
But doesn't Skank team with Stearns?
Yes, and I will say, one of the things that you will notice is, I believe Class C, when we're in it,
has 9 teams in it right now. It's shrunk largely because of this, like you'll see Holton, MA, and Dexter. It's really hard to be a Class C school and have 11-person soccer and 11-person football and boys, like the numbers just don't support it. So that's why you've seen so many of those in the Class D schools. They're either small or don't have 2 sports, so they'll be fine.
What about Orno? What's it?
Orno's thing with them is they just have such a rich soccer tradition that they've got 40 boys and 40 of them play a sport.
Yeah.
Like, their football kids are that way and their soccer kids are that way, and that's just.
That's Orono Sports Cross Board. Their athletic participation rate is extremely high.
Yeah.
And they have cross-country and golf problems, yeah.
They have cross-country and golf and field hockey as well on the girls'
Yeah.
side. They can field a lot of sports. They're adding volleyball now as well. I don't know how they find
Oh,
it,
my.
And they're good at all of them.
And I think just the last thing I'll add to this is, anytime we've made, when we talked about this in football, as a principal at the time, I wanted to make sure, we don't make these decisions based on our record or how successful we want to be. Obviously, we want the kids to find success, right? But success isn't necessarily how many wins they have. They're having
Safety
a
is
good experience. Safety and a good
pretty big
experience.
priority.
So this truly is a number safety.
Down to that league doesn't look easy either.
And I know one of the things that people have expressed like worry about is Dexter girls last year dropped to 8-person, showed up with 23 girls and won the state championship. I can assure you that we won. It's not gonna be the case here. Like, yes, there may be a couple of kids that show up and we get to 19. We might go 500 and 8-man at best. Like, this is not that scenario going on, so.
What we don't want is to lose the program.
Correct, that's really where I'm at.
Absolutely.
I wanna keep 17 kids into next year so we keep that number back up.
Given the number of young kids that you've got, and it's definitely, it's a men versus boys.
It is.
Yeah.
That was the
Eighth
same
grade,
situation
a
in football.
freshman versus a senior.
Football had the same situation.
Yeah, I think you guys are on the right track, and
Plus the kids.
as far as I'm concerned, it's just
Yeah.
when you get your numbers final around the 1st of July, make a decision on that, and I think from what I've heard, most people here support that. And
Absolutely.
We have that general consensus, and I'll just put that in the minutes.
yeah, I think everyone has said something positive so
Yeah.
far. Consensus is made.
Well, thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Sorry, cut you off with the motions.
Next, we've got no old business. For the new business, we've got some resignations and retirements.
Yes, so we have 3 resignations here. So Janice Preventure, who has been a special ed tech for us, has taken another position as an occupational therapist, so that is her background. Elaine Morey actually was the one that we had given approval at the last board meeting, who had been battling some medical conditions that we had approved some time off without pay, and it has just determined that she's gonna be unable to work for us beyond that time, so she has resigned her position, but certainly in good standing, and if those conditions change, we would definitely be interested in bringing her back at some point. And then Matt Morrison is stepping down just due to time commitments from the HS Outing Club after doing it for many years.
Does that mean we won't have an outing club, or?
No, Mr. Ward has already some people that
Okay.
have expressed interest.
Okay, that's good, I mean, I still would let Matt go if you want to.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't, no, you gotta stay.
Sorry. I would look for a motion to accept the resignations and retirements.
Well, I move that we accept the resignations, retirements with regret.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have nominations.
All right, I am not gonna read all of the coaches' nominations that you have there. What I will say about all of the coaching nominations is if they are not returning, you have already approved them individually at a prior meeting, but these are all returning.
Can I just ask a question though? I noticed we have a boys B team soccer for BMS, but no A team.
She's no longer,
Oh, we haven't filled that one, but,
not for that.
They should have somebody.
yes, but we have not filled
It's
that.
just vacant, okay.
That one's
all right.
still vacant, yes.
I work till 5, I
Couldn't anyway.
But under teachers, you have Tessa Walsh, who we're very excited to bring in. We were able to do a Zoom interview with her, to fill one of our 3-4 grade positions, so we have filled both of those open positions now. And then Willow Knapp is filling our IT position at the middle school / Miles Lane School. Again, we're excited because that was a position that was open for the majority of the year last year. So we were able to hire someone, and that person had since resigned, so we're excited to be able to have someone for this to start the year. And I believe that is it outside of the coaches.
Did you do the?
Custodian.
Oh, I'm sorry, custodians, yes. So, Mark, I'm not gonna pronounce his last name. Edgercheck, I'm gonna go with.
I was there. Let me ask him.
I read it once, and I made him say it 3 times, and I still don't so thank you, Scott. Coming on for custodian, Ashley Workett for Speditech, and Ginger Kegley, Speditech, who has also been doing some substituting for us, and unfortunately was stealing her from Kathy. Because that's what we do, we hire.
Keeping her one day a week.
Yeah, we hire secretaries for adult ed, and then we hire them other spots, and that's, Kathy just trains them for us, and we keep stealing them, so.
For Kathy.
Go on, the team player.
Well, I move that we accept the nominations, all of the nominations as a block.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is also unanimous. Thank you. First reading of policy, it looks like we don't have anything there. Second reading of policy, we've got DD grants and DJR federal procurement.
Yes, there are no changes from the first reading on either of these. If you remember, the procurement manual was just a big update of all of the minimum values for the different, for like the micro grants and the different purchases going from like $1,000 to $3,500. And the grants one was really just that one change. So anything over $1,000, we can move that to $3,500 where you need board approval before going out and getting a grant done.
It's always nice to have our procedure manual match the federal guidelines.
Yes.
So I would like to make a motion to accept both the policies as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? We have one opposed. Next we've got board computation and declaration of the 2026 budget validation results.
Yes, so we have, I did email you the budget results, and you also have them in your packet. So we have to, seems like the 5th different way that you guys have to approve this throughout the budget process, but it is the last vote that we have to take. So basically, you would just be approving that the election results, and then we will have you sign some paperwork that Sue has for us ready to go, and a motion and a second for this.
Is there a specific motion?
And we can just read the motion from what
Oh,
it says. Sorry, Scott, I didn't prompt you on this one.
Scott is a good reader.
Just got
He
before
was a
on the
teacher, so
agenda.
he knows how to
Number
read.
4 on the
His
agenda.
glasses work.
Just read it.
I need new glasses.
And they're all
see,
scratched
but he
up,
can
and
read.
I have to go like this. Read the entire thing here?
No, just
Read on the agenda.
just talking to it.
Where are we here?
Read on the agenda.
Computation and declaration of the fiscal year 2026 budget validation results.
Yeah. Okay, he was talking to us.
There's your motion.
That's all you do.
There was.
Oh, right here, I thought you had to read it off.
Yeah, no.
Yes. Okay, then, I move that we, the board approves the computation and declaration of the FY 2026 budget validation results.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
In fact, we're gonna pause and sign that piece of paper so we don't forget.
Okay. Take it official.
Oh, boy.
Done one way, I didn't.
Yeah.
Where am I signing?
You can start here.
I can start at the top like
Yeah.
that.
We'll just be down from there.
Okay, make me nervous.
It's signed the same line.
Sign on the thing, right? Or is it?
So, whatever line you
Just
sign
one.
on, the first one.
Just one.
Sign on that same line.
So you don't even have to
All
pay
the
for
drops.
it.
Yes.
Can't miss this one.
Well,
Well, wait a minute.
I do have a spare just in case.
No, that's-
Oh,
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah. It's not usually.
I appreciate that. It gets really bad when we have to sign a bunch of them and they all have to be in the same spot.
However, the
You mess up.
line, when we did it in the line, that worked
That
great.
works great.
Yeah, that was actually
So
very
from
good.
here on out, we
Yeah.
are in a line.
We just one copy of them.
Give us the leeway on this one. Expect us to be compliant with the next one.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
You know, there's like
Fine,
8 or
go
10 of
with that.
them. It's
Select your pens as you go.
In that case, would we try to remain always in the same order and like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Except for Scott, he likes to wander and he messes it up.
I don't listen to anything. We've tried for the last 3 years, go, well.
Definitely threw the short straw on this. Oh, we don't need to put our pens in.
If you don't want it, I'll take it.
Oh.
Do you really wanna spend more money on pens?
That's fine.
It's like a tractor, you know? with a lot of-
really a big,
We were just voting on the
It's
budget.
expensive
I was,
pens.
we were the two no's. I'm kidding.
With the two.
My wife and I said, vote no. Yeah. I tried. I was gonna sit over there. Mr. Ronstadt got it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
Next, we have overview of the ESEA grant application.
So Mrs. Saul, she will do her annual review of our application.
So you should have a copy in your packets of the proposed project descriptions and budget for 25-26. So ESEA, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is how we get all of our title funding, Title 1, 2, 4, and also we receive a little bit of Title 5. And I'll wait just a minute, just to check. Do you have it? Somebody have it? Yes, awesome. Okay, perfect. So at the time that I wrote my report, I do believe we did have our Title I preliminary allocations. Everything is preliminary until the State Department of Education tells me otherwise. So right now, we are planning to receive preliminary Title I Part A for FY26, $484,431.97. And that is roughly an increase over this past year of $20,000, which was a pleasant surprise. Again, it's preliminary, so take that and just keep that in mind. So for Title I, just a reminder for those of you that this is for our interventions. This pays for primarily how we use this money in our district is to pay salaries and benefits for our Title I staff. We have Title I staff at Jewett, Miles Lane, and Bucksport Middle School. The high school does not qualify for Title I funding to be used at that school. So I have to complete with the building principals a comprehensive needs assessment based on the most recent data we have, and we look at trends over a 3-year period, and we identify goals, SMART goals, that have to be based on our data, attendance data, math data, and ELA data, and we write those goals, and then the grant funds have to pay to support our progress towards those goals. And that's how we use it for Title I for funding our intervention staff primarily. After school programming, summer school programming, and some level of supplies to run those interventions. So that is a little bit of an increase, which is nice because thinking about the fact that we do use this to pay for salaries, everybody's salary does change every year, so it is helpful when we get a little bit of a bump in that so that we can cover our existing staff. So we do have required set-asides. We have to set aside a small amount of money for homeless project. We have district funds that pay for some homeless things if we need them as well, but I have written into this one right now, just in the draft form of $500. In the past, we've done just $100, and that really just didn't make much sense. We do have other funds to help support homeless, but we did increase that to $500. There's also a required set-aside that you have to set aside 1% for family engagement, and so we use family engagement funds in those 3 schools to put on family nights or to send home family engagement and math and literacy materials. So I'm going to skip Title II just for a second and go to Title IV. So Title IV is earmarked in the federal and state government to support students in academic enrichment programs that supplement and not supplant what you already budget locally for. And funds from this title may be combined with Title I Part A and that is what we've been doing in our district for a very long time. So when I go in and write the application, we move whatever we get for Title IV over into Title I to give us enough money to cover what we need to cover in Title I. This year's Title IV preliminary allocations is $48,824.69, roughly $2,000 more than last year. So if you put those together, we have roughly $22,000 in that Title I project line, which is helpful right now. Right now, Title II is for preparing, training, and recruiting high-quality teachers, principals, and school leaders in schools. These funds must be used to also supplement what we pay for out of the local budget. We can't supplant it. Last year, we received this current year, we received $68,612, and the federal government has not released to the state government, to the State Department of Education yet, what we're getting for Title II allocations. So the state has asked that I write this application with that amount in mind, last year's amount, this current year's amount, but a placeholder in the application is just $1 for right now. So I'll write the project, hope that we get roughly the same amount. But if we don't, just sharing with you that Title II is the title that has the least direct, it's definitely indirect impact to kids, but the least direct impact to kids' services in the immediate. So if we're going to get a reduction in any of the titles, that one feels a little bit more okay than the others, because we are providing direct services to kids with our other funds. So then Title V is not on your list, but we do receive a little bit of Title V funds. Title V doesn't follow the same required statutes as the rest, so it does not have to be put out to public comment like this does. But just so that you guys know, this current year, we received $13,000. We have not received our allocations, but when I was on a state meeting call, we were thinking we were going to get roughly $8,500, so a little reduction there. But that cannot be used for salaries. That has to be used for supplies. Any questions about this project?
How much did we spend on homeless last year?
So even the $100 that I put in this, we did not use. Katie, do you know what if we had locally, if we spent anything on homeless?
Just on transportation.
Just transportation?
That's all you pretty much do is transportation.
Yeah.
There's no, like meals and clothes and.
We have other funding sources that we
Okay.
use, if we have to for, various things, like we've had that couple situations where someone's going on a school-sponsored trip, they may not have enough money to do something like that, so we have other resources that we can do, but really, for the most part, our budget money for almost is, transportation, driver.
Okay.
Isn't there a federal fund that covers a lot of that?
Yeah, and again, most of that is where it's under the title. Fund is not, we don't get specific money directly from McKinney-Vento that we can just plug into a line.
No.
Even though we have to by law have McKinney-Vento funds available. Again, we always do it through transportation. But we've had this placeholder for $100, but we had this one situation this year where talking about like the student may need more. $100 doesn't cover a lot of costs at this point. So we want to make sure that we have sufficient funds in case it does come.
So what would transportation entail, like a bus and?
So we have actually a van, it's Equinox, that is specifically used for transporting homeless students. So if you have a student that lives outside your district that is homeless, but attended we have to cover that transportation for them to attend school, to make sure they get there.
There is a limit on how far outside it is, no?
I mean,
It could be,
there has to be a determination that it is in the student's best interest to attend the district that they were attending.
Yeah, it would be somebody that was here and then moved.
Far away, right? So if you have moved in, say, you attended here, you end up in a homeless shelter in Bangor.
okay.
Housing there,
We haven't had any ridiculously far away.
not, ours are all have been.
Okay.
Yeah, usually Ellsworth, Bangor, Belfast,
Okay.
that kind of.
Quite frankly, most of the time, we see it on the other side because you have the home co-op where families will get placed there, but attend schools in other districts. So we have to split that cost with the district, where they're either attending or coming from, so.
So we
So
have,
other districts split that with us too.
yeah, I was just gonna say,
Yes.
so
It
if
is pretty
somebody ended up in the homeless shelter in Bangor would have to split the cost with us if.
We end up shifting
Yeah.
monies around between districts and throughout the course of the year. But last year, we had this pot of money that we had to spend on homeless. So we bought that vehicle specifically to transport that way. We weren't tying up one of our vans that we're using, was predominantly for either extra co-curricular activities or special ed, transportation
Do we
loans.
have a special person to drive that car, or the bus drivers, or?
All hands on deck.
Anyone that can drive a car.
Yeah.
So part of this grant too is that this is open for public comment. So anyone, I will share this proposed project outline on the website, and it will be open for public comment. Obviously can't be open forever because I have to write the grant and get it approved in time because there's a deadline. But it will be open today through July 3rd. So that's when we will close the public comment window. So if anyone has any thoughts on what we should be spending this money on, other than Title I primarily salaries and benefits and supplies, they can email me, call me at the central office, and we can discuss the projects. And if you guys have any questions or concerns about that, feel free to, you can ask now, but also reach out to me at a different time.
But the requests have to meet federal guidelines.
Yes,
what
which are
what
pretty
qualifies.
strict. Mhm,
So
yeah.
we can't just throw in anything that we would like a new
Certainly.
playground.
No,
or something.
can't do
But
that.
she can tell you why we couldn't do that, if somebody has an overwhelming need for something.
Right, exactly. And so the State Department of Education, the Maine Department of Education's website has spending snapshots for each of these titles, for like anybody to just look up and say, oh, what can you spend Title I money on? And it clearly tells you what you can and what you can't, and ideas on what would get approved and what would get kicked back and denied, so. And I will get the grant written, and it's due by July 30th.
And the federal fiscal year is different than our fiscal year, so it runs through the end of September. Our current funds, which doesn't line up really with anything for us at all, but
Right.
Is this the amount of funding that's from our percentage of free and reduced lunch? Or is
So
that-
partially.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep, so partially. And so we have a school-wide distinction versus targeted assistance for our Title I, and there are two different categories of programming, and we have to maintain, well, they're changing the rules on this, Katie and I learned this, but it used to be, up until just now, that you had to maintain a 40% or higher free or reduced lunch percentage in a school, in a certain building, to maintain school-wide programming, which is a little less strict than targeted assistance, and we are school-wide right now. So we can pay for salaries and benefits for Title I staff, but we don't have to report to the state an identified list of Title I students. We get to kind of locally decide, okay, we're going to service students that are not meeting grade level expectations in the 20 to 40th percentile, for example. If we were targeted assistance because our percentages dropped to below that and we still receive Title I funds, the state would tell us a little more strictly who we can use these monies for. So we try not to drop below 40%.
So,
We're fine right now.
Just to clarify, is it number of responses or number of families that are below that threshold?
It's the qualified, yeah, they have to qualify for
Okay.
free or reduced lunch. And it's hard because we don't get as many of those forms back because it's all
That was
free
my
right now.
concern, because nobody's filling them out because it's all
Right.
free right now.
But we also, and Katie could speak to this a little bit better, we have other ways that the state is allowing us to get those percentages.
Okay.
So different certification,
Income things and
Yeah.
that type of,
Yep.
okay.
So-
just assistance, right?
I just want to play devil's advocate
Sure.
here. Is it just the state that's telling us this, or do the federal guidelines also allow what the state is telling us?
So both, federal and
Both,
state,
okay.
yes.
Because I remember back a time ago where the state told us we could do something with Medicaid funds. And the feds did not. We had to pay money back.
Mhm.
And I would hate to think that we got a few years down the road where we didn't collect a certain form that we were supposed to, only to find out that the goons down in Augusta had it wrong yet again. And it's because they don't come up with the money,
Right.
we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the state has actually, Katie and I learned this a lot too, the state has actually been through some auditing with the federal government and they had to change some of their practices. We're fine, I mean, we're in line with their practices, but they've had to kind of change the way they're billing and invoicing, so but that's all.
Because these are federal funds.
These are
These aren't state funds.
These are federal funds
They
given
make
to
their
the
own
state.
rules, whatever they wanna do, I don't care,
Right.
that's their prerogative, but
Right.
they're federal funds, I don't wanna have us be on the hook for
Right.
federal funds.
Nope.
Because somebody else told us to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright.
Thank you.
We've already done 6, so now we're on consideration to accept a $250,000 gift from Sylvia.
Yeah, so as I spoke earlier, I received that message from Andy and Shelby that they as a family have chosen to make another generous donation. Katie and I went back just to 2019, and just very specific donations from the family. This will put them at about $750,000 since 2019 of money donated. That does not include scholarships through the Solomon Scholars Program or the local scholarship that they give out here. These are just direct monetary donations to the RSU. So again, because of the size of it, we do have to have board approval. I can't tell you what the plan is to use it for. That will be a combination of stakeholders from the district. You know, and like I said, Andy and Shelby have been very great about not saying we want it spent on X, Y, and Z, but they do like to be part of the process, just knowing you know, where the money's going, which is obviously a fair request, so.
Boys soccer, we could use it for boys soccer recruitment.
Recruitment.
Well, I move that we accept the $250,000 gift from the Silvernail family to be used for school programming as agreed upon with RSU 25 stakeholders and Andy and Shelby Silvernail.
Second.
I do have a question before we vote on this. Like, this doesn't just go to like unallocated balance and hurt us for like what percentage we can move around. Like, is there a certain like line item that's separate from our budget that this goes in, or what is the process for that?
So it will be, we'll treat it similar, we treat it like a grant.
If we treat it like a grant.
Oh,
And this
okay.
is like a private donation that is separate from,
It flows into your special revenue fund.
yes,
Correct.
So it's outside of the general fund.
Okay, and then that was my concern. I didn't want to like just infuse a bunch of money into our budget and then like, oh, yeah.
And there's still accounting, I mean, there's still structures there that, so if the dollars are accounted for, but it's, like Tom said, it's not directly part of our regular budget.
Now, any of these expenditures up to a certain amount have to be board approved, or we don't?
That's not what we've done in the past.
Okay.
We accept the donation, and then typically like we do, once any grant, like you've accepted the grant, of course typically grants have very specific things that you're doing with the grant, whereas this is a donation, and basically what we've done, and we'll be fully transparent on what it's being spent for, but you know, we'll sit down with the family and identify the biggest priorities for the district and try to maximize student impact. That's their biggest.
Yeah, because as it was being decided, Jim was bringing it to the meeting and just letting us know. It wasn't anything to vote on or anything, but just so
Well, what's
that.
an example that this is happening?
So the first
Process.
the first sizable donation that they gave us. So you have 3 CNC machines here at the high school. So you have a CNC routing table, vertical milling machine, and plasma table. That was right around $110,000 Katie, of equipment that was purchased for the engineering work. We also paid for professional development at the Miles Lane School, at middle school, I believe, just Singapore. We brought in a math coach to really focus on the implementation of our mathematics program, K-8.
Then you give Andy a call and say, what do you think?
Yeah, we laid out, we list a set of priorities, that was good. And
you have
I don't want to, like, he's not looking over our shoulder and
Right.
saying, you can do this and you can't do that. He just
Has he
wants
ever
to be
rejected
informed.
anything?
What's that?
Has he ever rejected anything? Yeah. The way
He
you've
just
been-
wants to know what
You've
we
been
can
smart
afford.
enough to know.
Yeah,
Pretty
I think we have a pretty good track record of identifying.
Yeah, it's pretty,
You know, and certainly when you get a sizable donation, you look to target things that you wouldn't be able to normally get inside your regular budget, right? Without going to whether it be a capital improvement program or using a reserve fund. So like if the board had decided to take on the initiative that they want to bring in a math coach, right, for the district, you would either have to have funded that through the regular budget or gone to like a curriculum reserve account to pay for that. Whereas, we made the choice that, this is not something we're gonna be able to fund or may not want to do the regular, so we could use this expenditure. If you want to do a bigger capital improvement project.
Right.
I don't think I would ever suggest tarring or repaving a parking lot with it, right?
Right.
But if you were going to enhance programming, so say you decide that the Performing Arts Center needs something that would enhance the programming for our students, that's a bigger expenditure that you maybe don't wanna add $75,000 into your regular budget. You would have to do a capital improvement or a bigger grant. This might be something that would fund one of those types of projects, so. Obviously, whenever, I've already had, every time I see someone that say that was great, seeing that on the news the other day, have you thought about doing this? So everybody has lots of ideas of how, and they're all great, right? There's 1,000 different ways that we could use this money to impact students. And it goes fast. I mean, $250,000 is a huge amount of money. But it goes quickly. So, I think what we really want to try to be strategic about is what is something that we don't see ourselves being able to do through the regular budget process without tapping into some sort of reserve fund, and it's gonna have a high impact on students and, it's something that Andy and Shelby believe in and want to support as well, so.
We absolutely don't want to take advantage of our donors.
No.
And we want
Especially
to
him.
make sure that we're doing something that, is responsible and meets, what the community would like to see happen. And at the same time, we don't want to create any fiscal cliffs for ourselves. And I think, at least what we've seen so far is all of those criteria have always been met. And it's incredibly generous of the Silverdales to do this, and just very appreciative of all that they've done.
Absolutely. And again, we donated, we dedicated that wing. That was not them coming to us and asking like, what are you gonna do to, like.
No, that was the discussion here.
Yeah, that was, something that we wanted to do to recognize their efforts, and that's just who they are as people. So, again, we're very fortunate, and we will certainly keep you apprised as, it's not gonna be something where we're just gonna decide tomorrow where we're spending it. We'll take the summer, we'll meet as an administrative team, we'll bring some, what we're gonna make it for recommendations for spending, but ideally, I will say, it won't be one of those things that we will bring every dollar that we spend here for approval.
I just was wondering procedurally how it works.
Absolutely, no, it's a great question, Keith. And at least that's how we've done it in the past, and I think it has been successful.
Okay, good.
Then, do we already have?
Yeah, we already have.
We do.
Yeah.
There's no other.
We already have a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, we've got discussion, possible action, to grant superintendent the authority to transfer fiscal year 25 funds up to 5% between cost centers as needed.
This is just an annual ask because, as Tom has said, the budgeting is not an exact science by any means. We make educated guesses as to where we're gonna need money in different cost centers throughout the course of the year. Stuff happens where we overspend in one area, we underspend in the other, we stay within what our overall budget is, but sometimes we need a little bit of flexibility. State statute allows us to do that, just with board approval, that we are allowed to move.
Does this include reserves too, or had we made a separate motion for that?
This is I
thought we allowed you to move reserves as well, up to a certain amount.
So what happens is earlier in the year, when we got the FY23 audit, it let us know how much of our unallocated fund balance we had. And then we were approved through the district budget meeting, that we move up to a certain amount, and at that time, we made a recommendation to the board to move money from the unallocated fund balance into that. This is to move money within the fiscal year from cost center to cost center.
We're not supposed to exceed 5% over budget in a certain cost center. And so let's say, a good example of this might be you have a incredibly special needs kid move into district and you hadn't budgeted for this individual. And so therefore you had to expend the funds and you went over the 5%. This would allow the superintendent to be able to move funds from other cost centers so that you were able to fill that gap. And that's what this is really about. And it's just accounting essentially.
And it's capped at 5% so people don't play games and like budget in one area and look like you're giving a bunch of money, but don't spend it there and then move 80% of that out of that cost center to another one.
Which in that same example, you can see how that could easily happen. Because people might come and say, well, I really want, the kindergartners to have everything and plus, I don't want those special needs kids to have anything. And you could goof around with your budget. Don't do that here, fortunately. So you shouldn't have very much to move around, but things do happen.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And again, most of the time we see this in our food service, because we kind of run at a deficit. We talked about this a little bit in finance. We have some repairs that were occurred that we didn't budget for inside food service. We'll end up moving those, most likely those expenses into facilities and maintenance. It just allows us to cover those expenses.
Well, I move that we grant the superintendent the authority to transfer FY 2025 funds up to 5% between cost centers as needed.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have consideration to adopt kindergarten through 12 social studies curriculum.
So we'll bring Mrs. Hall back up here again. I think we've seen a lot of these. I just want to commend Ms. Hall on her work and all of our teachers. There's been a lot of curriculums that you have adopted in the last year and a half. And I know at this meeting, you get to see the presentation and the neat documents and you see all the work, but that's a lot of hours and a lot of time spent by teachers, by Mrs. Hall, and has revamped our curriculum and updated it.
And it's a lot of input by the teachers, the subject matter experts, and I really appreciate all that
some great conversations
work.
at the curriculum committee. Really kind of delving in. The teachers are really buying into this process. And I just feel like we have a very transparent, thorough curriculum that meets state standards. And this is our last core content. For now, until we revamp them all again, but.
Until we get the new guidelines.
But I mean, like you were saying, I do want to mention that all of these are right on the website. And you can see the materials the teachers are using in each grade is like, if you're questioning what book are they reading?
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's very
Like, it's so transparent, and I absolutely love what she's done with that.
And the teachers have worked really hard too, so it's taken a lot of their time, but they appreciate the involvement in the process. They're the experts, right? Like, I can stand up here and present, but they know.
And I don't think that things were not transparent before, but keeping those updated is a lot of work, and it is very much appreciated. Because that is what creates the transparency, for everybody.
So I'll be as brief as I can be, but if you have questions, I would be happy to answer them, but you also have 3 members of the curriculum steering committee right here that have seen this. You guys have probably seen it, I think, 3 times now. So we've been working on social studies for So it's been, this has been a work in progress with the social studies committee. We started last year. If you remember, my curriculum review cycle had this content for last year, and we did a lot of work last year, and then the state said, whoa, hold on. And so we did, we paused a little bit because the state legislatures thought that they would bring the social studies main learning results back to review them again and make some changes. But then it got put on hold again. And so we had a couple of sessions, curriculum steering weighed in, the social studies team, K-12 weighed in, and we're like, do we wait or do we rewrite it so that it's at least up to date to the most recent, even though that was 2019? Can we get it up to date to that level? And then if legislation does happen that changes these, which we thought may happen this year, but it didn't, then we will make adjustments as needed. But we as the curriculum committee, but also the social studies team, felt like we wanted something out there, and we wanted to update what we had.
Plus, if we approve this, then the state will come through with their end, and there'll be more work to be
So
done.
yeah, tomorrow, we're like, oh, no.
Wait a second, we're just gonna change the wording. So just really briefly, you have a link in the board online packet to the entire document, and I know you've seen these, so you know that it looks like because I like to have things look the same, it looks like all the other content areas in its format. It'll be put on if you approve it, it'll be put on the curriculum website as a PDF document. This is in Drive format so that teachers and you can just click the table of contents and quickly get to what you want to look at if you need to. But just know that this has every K through 8 social studies content, and then at the high school level, like we've done with every other curriculum that we've updated, it's by course, right? So there's a US history, there's world studies, there's AP history, psychology. All of those have their own page. You can click on those. You can see what standards are being taught, what resources they're using, and what's being assessed for all the grade levels. You'll see at the beginning, there's a table of contents, there's an introduction. You'll see that as a team, we decided on some social studies skills across the K-12 span that we felt would be really important for our students to leave high school with, as far as research skills, developing geographic awareness of where we are in the world, civil discourse and collaboration, historical analysis, and there's engagement and application of social studies skills. So those you'll see across K-12, and the social studies committee felt very strongly that those needed to be woven in as developmentally appropriate right down to kindergarten. So you'll also see that there are the major eras in United States history, world history, personal finance standards that the state of Maine calls for, and also a focus on the Wabanaki tribes from the state of Maine, and that is also woven throughout our curriculum. So I can answer any questions,
The
but,
state mandates only education in Wabanaki?
so, well, they
I mean,
mandate
just-
lots of things.
Well, I mean, just like, they single out that
It's
group of-
specifically written in the Maine learning results that the Wabanaki tribes, our 4
Okay.
tribes will be, yep.
Okay.
Back when my son was in grade school, they were doing reports on the Cherokees, the Apaches, and I said, well, isn't this supposed to be? And they said, oh, they're all Indians, don't worry about it. It's great to see that we're focusing on the state
Come a long
mandate
way.
where we need to
Yeah.
be, and that's.
And I think
that's
what's really
important.
come a long ways is state resources that are available to actually, so that our kids can learn about the Wabanaki tribes, right down to kindergarten. So if this gets approved and adopted, I have funds that are set aside that are already in my curriculum budget from this year to be sure that particularly our K-4 classrooms have the resources that they need that are updated, right? So these are recently published picture books, developmentally appropriate about the tribes. So I'm feeling pretty good about our curriculum.
Christina, I get a question by
Yes.
many older adults asking if civics is still a requirement for all students who are here. It said it shows, but what grade?
So civics and government is a strand that's throughout this whole document.
So they don't have a specific civics class?
Right, no, it's just woven, and you can see at the high school level that the civics and government standards are throughout the high school courses.
Because I'm getting from a lot of them that the kids don't understand it. So I'm wondering, why if it's woven in, why is it missing, where are we missing this, what's happening?
Well,
And I don't expect an answer, that's a
Well, I mean, I
rhetorical
think-
question, but, because there used to be a class civics that everybody had to take. It was all about government and everything, and you were in high school. And now it's like you said, so if somebody says the civics taught, well, I would say not as a specific class.
It's not a standalone class.
Right.
But a lot of what is covered, so I feel like Sarah Lampert's class covers a smorgasbord of things, right? So all of our freshmen, I'm accurate in saying that, Mr. Ward. All of our freshmen take, it's called World Studies, but she covers so much in there. She covers a lot of the personal finance standards. Because we know that all kids are going to take, the majority of kids are going to take that class. Beyond that, sometimes it gets separated on what they'll take. So a lot of what you'll find in Sarah's class will outline a lot of those civics and government, but they are woven throughout. But a lot of it's covered in
I
Sarah's.
agree with that.
I didn't take the civics.
I didn't either, they didn't have
either.
civics when I was in.
I know more about things now because I've had to research them myself.
Yeah.
I learned from Girl State.
But,
See, I'm
but,
talking a long time ago.
and you know
Right,
me,
back
I'm
in the
a
ancient
government
days.
geek, so it's hard for me, but I look at my 3 children and they don't know anything from Adam. I
Well,
mean,
That's
we
what I'm
could
getting at.
be, you know,
If it's,
in a straight up dictatorship and they wouldn't know the difference.
if it's woven
You
in,
know,
are we
my
missing?
daughter came and told me, that, the government's bad, and I said, well, do you not like me? I said, because I'm in the government,
She's learning.
because she just doesn't know it. She's a junior.
I know,
And
that's
so,
concerning.
I don't think that there's enough available out there. But it might just be because I'm a government geek, and I like this stuff a little too much.
But were you in high school?
Oh, yeah, I've always been like this.
I never was. I never was. I had to learn a lot in the past.
I was.
10
I
years.
understand
What I would say is I think there are parallels that you could see this to other, because some people say, and I'll just use math, because obviously that was my background, right? People say, well, you don't teach fundamentals anymore, like nobody knows how to abstract, I just, there's
Jim
a
said
lot.
that.
Right,
But
they're abstracts, but numbers and operations is in every single math class from kindergarten to AP calculus. That is woven into everything.
It's gotta be.
But it's also about interest. If you're not interested in learning about civics, you're not gonna retain
That's a
it.
good point.
Yeah,
That's,
so.
So if you're not Tom,
No, it doesn't
Mr.
sound-
Weirdo
that's what
over
I'm saying.
here,
Well, the light
It might not be weird, like,
right,
So there's, again, I think just, to me, that's something that you could always, if someone asks you, how come it's not just a class? Well, we don't have just a numbers and operations class. We have lots of classes where all this stuff is built in. If you look at our English standards, you have English standards that are built in every English class from kindergarten. Civics is one that gets targeted all the time for what, and I think because it's in our face quite often in the news and social media and everything, but this
right,
is
but I
not,
wasn't,
this
I
is
wasn't
not
interested in
specific.
calculus, so I didn't retain anything.
And you had to take it.
Kinda, yeah. I didn't have to,
But you
and
said
now
you're
I'm
not
wishing
happy.
I hadn't.
now,
When you say built in,
well, I think kids are missing stuff. When they graduate from high school, they don't understand how our government works. There's something wrong because they're voting, and
They don't
we've got people
care.
voting that don't.
They're not necessarily voting, that's also a problem.
Well, that's true too, they may not be voting.
Which
but
is not a
some
bad
are
thing if they
voting.
don't understand it.
Well,
Yeah.
But
they
I
do
will,
it,
it is,
they did
I will just say that this is aligned to the state standards and it is in there.
Okay, because it's I think state law that we have to teach civics.
We have to teach all of it.
Yeah, I think it's state law that we have to be aligned
Scott,
with
have you
their.
reviewed the material?
Have I what?
Have you reviewed your material?
I went online, but she gave yes, I did, this afternoon.
well, you can read the material and still not know what's
Right.
being taught on Tuesday.
Right.
Okay, well, you
Now,
answered it,
Now,
thank you.
let me ask you this, because this has been something that Jim and I always used to talk about. And that is the idea that we try to tie some local history into our curriculum. We are privileged enough to live in an area that has had a very rich history.
Yes.
Like the Wabanaki.
Yes,
Like
that's what I was
Wabanaki.
thinking, yeah.
And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of resources that are easily obtainable.
Right.
But, knowing what happened in that revolutionary to the early 1800s period in this area, it's why we've got the Fort Knox, it's why
Yes.
Bucksport's
Right.
here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
The Penobscot expedition happened.
there's all kinds of cool things that have happened.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that people don't understand why Orland has its name, and all of that could, easily be taught in a class. And I think the kids would find it interesting.
Yeah,
You know,
and
why
it's
does
in
my
there.
hometown have its name?
Well, Verona used to be called Orphan Island.
Yeah, and those types of things can be interesting.
Right.
Is there any thought in our curriculum of trying to incorporate some of that?
So it is in here, so there's quite a bit of Maine history and quite a bit of local history in here. And you'll see references to resources that we tap into and we're gonna continue to. What I like about having it written in here, it's not like it's written in stone, but it does mean, okay, this grade level is going to take this field trip because it's in the curriculum that this is where they're going to go to the Abbey Museum, or they're going to go to, so we have in here the Historical Society, we have a Historical Society here, and they are more than willing to partner with us and give us resources. Fort Knox is in here, so there are different things that you'll find, I don't remember the exact grade level, but if you look through here, we did make sure that we were tapping into local resources to cover local Maine history, but also present day too, like what's around us. So what is our town government like? How is Bucksport's town government different than Orland's town government? So that's all in here.
That's good.
Any other questions, comments for me or the community?
I would look for motion.
Well, I move that we adopt the kindergarten to 12th social studies curriculum as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you won't have to see so much of me next year.
This brings us to calendar and announcements.
All right. So curriculum committee, having thought meeting until
I
September.
guess we're not. So, if I can, I'll message you earlier, but if not, still not.
Policy committee will be meeting in July, so that we can get those policies wrapped up for you, that David talked about. I'll be at central office at 5:30, I will not change the time on that one, so we will have it there at 5:30.
As of now.
Yeah. Finance committee will meet before the school board meeting. Our school board meeting will be on July 15th. And then facilities and Aspire will not be meeting, and while Aspire is now wrapped into our, as an agenda item onto our curriculum committee, and facilities will not be meeting until September.
Are we keeping the Aspire committee now that it's incorporated into our?
Not with the Aspire.
We're gonna move it to the curriculum.
It's just gonna
committee,
be
so the
Oh, so it's just gonna be part of.
Within our
Okay, so it's not a separate meeting anymore.
Because we had so much overlap, anyways, of committee members that we felt that it just made sense to transfer. And we're also looking at how we can still get student involvement that we used to have on the Aspire committee wrapped into the curriculum.
We're gonna try to get a couple of student representatives for curriculum.
Great.
Help
All right.
with civics.
Yes, there you go. That's right.
All right.
Yep,
I
as a
would look for a
subcommittee.
motion to,
I'll
So
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
and we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Christina, next meeting, have you planned to be here?
I plan to-